I've been DXing AM and FM now since the early 90s, right? Come from a radio family, and it actually started at shortwave DXing even before that, back in the late 80s. But AM and FM really started that in the early 90s, and I've used a lot of different radios over the years, a lot of different antennas and different gear, portables, desktops, all kinds of stuff. And I had kept hearing about these things called SDRs, and quite frankly, I just didn't really get it. I didn't really understand what it could do. And then I kept seeing all these DXers talk about recording overnight, and they were reviewing their recordings to see what they captured. And I was like, oh, that sounds nice. I can DX without having get sunrise stuff without having to wake up early. I can catch a DX test that happens late at night without having to lose any sleep. How do I do this? How do I get on board? And at the time when I was first kind of learning about this, the options weren't that great. They were expensive and bulky and everything else. And then this came out. This is the HF Plus Dual from Airspy. This was my first SDR. I got this in 2018. And I started learning about how to use SDRs. I didn't know anything about SDRs when I first got this. Didn't know how to make them work or anything. And did a lot of learning, did a lot of experimentation. And then this guy came out. And this made this, on AM at least, like, forget that. Let's do this. This is the HF Plus Discovery from Airspy. And what we're going to talk about today on DX 101 is we're going to assume you're in the same boat that I was in 2018. You don't know anything about SDRs. Maybe you just bought one of these. Maybe you're looking at buying one of these. But you want to know, how do I take this and put this with my computer and get radio signals out so I can DX that? How do I do that? Well, today on DX 101, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to walk you through all the steps of downloading the software and plugging this into your computer, updating the firmware, plugging in your antenna, all of it. All right, let's do this. All right, so let's start looking here first at the actual SDR itself. You can see it's a tiny little thing. Look at that thin, small little package, like a mint tin. Some things you're going to need to know. There's only two connections on this radio. One is for your computer and one is for an antenna. You do need an external antenna for this. If you've been using a portable and just using the internal ferrite antenna that's inside the portable, sorry, you got to have an external antenna for this thing. You can build one, you can buy one. You'll need something that will give you a 50 or 75 ohm feed line that then connects to an SMA male, because the SMA female connector is what you have on the Airspy, okay? So you'll need some kind of adapter or jumper cable or something that has SMA, and then on the other side of that would be whatever connector you have on your feed line coming from your antenna. So for me, I have RG8X jumpers coming from my window panel to my radios, right? And those have PL259 connectors on the ends. So, to marry that up with my Airspy, I have an SO239 on one side of my little jumper cable and a male SMA on the other, and that plugs those directly in. Like I said, you will need an external antenna for this. If you don't have any other options, I'll put a link in the description for a U-loop. It's made by Airspy, and basically this U-loop is a great antenna when paired with this Airspy HF Plus Discovery. I've got a couple that I've worked on here at the house, and man, they work really, really well on the Airspy HF Plus Discovery. When you have the U-loop, you can place it like in your window. That's where I used to use mine, was like indoors in the window. Ideally, you want it to be outside if you can, but it's not waterproof. You have to waterproof it if you do that for some of the components that are on the U-loop. But if you don't have any other external antenna options and you don't have the money to get like a W6 LVP loop or one of those, or build your own, then the U-loop would be a fantastic option. I think they're like $35 US or something like that. So that and this will get you DX. You'll be able to DX using those two on AM and FM, by the way. And then the other connection is actually given to you by the folks at Airspy when you order it from them, which please do. Don't order this from like some random website that has like a knockoff or whatever, and they promise you a cheap price for the same thing. Don't do that. This is too good of a receiver for you to cheap out on it. Get this from an actual distributor that is listed on the Airspy website for your area that you live in, right? So I think it's airspy.us for our US folks, US and Canada, North America. It's airspy.us. Get this from an actual Airspy distributor. Please don't skimp out on this and get this as a knockoff from somebody else. Airspy will send you a USB cable that you will use for this. It has the 2 ferrite chokes on here to aid in noise reduction, and you just plug it in. Always get this wrong. There we go. Plug it in on this side. You have your antenna coming in here. This is USB-A. That'll go to your computer. USB 2 or 3, doesn't matter. Either one of those works. And you should be good to go, right? So that's all you need for the connections. You don't need any power source. It's self-powered by the USB. You have your antenna, which you may or may not need a power source depending on what kind of antenna you have. So you'll just want to make sure you know that. But you need an SMA male connector coming into this female connection here. You need your USB cable that comes with the Airspy into your computer. Now that we've gotten that far, let's look at the software. All right, so let's look now at the software part of the Airspy with our SDR Sharp software. Again, this is the Airspy software. So we're going to go to airspy.com/download, and we'll make sure we have the link in the video description for you here. But you'll have a couple of different options. This is the actual software that's used to interface and interact with the radio. Okay, so you have the SDR that you'll actually plug into your computer. That's the Airspy HF Plus Discovery here. This is what you plug in. This is where the radio lives, right? All the circuitry and everything that takes the signal coming in from the antenna and converts it into digital zeros and ones, and creates now on the output the audio for you and everything else. All that starts right here, and then you have the software. That's your interface. That's how you're changing your frequency, your mode from AM to upper sideband, things like that. So the software is how you're interacting, and that's called SDR Sharp. The actual SDR itself is called the Airspy HF Plus Discovery. This is the radio. This replaces the Drake. This replaces the Sony or the Panasonic radio that you've used for years. It's all right here in this little guy. And the SDR Sharp software is the buttons and the frequency display and all those things that you were used to looking at. Those are all in the software now, okay? So what we're going to do is we're actually show you how to download the software and get started. So first, go to this airspy.com/download, and you're going to find a area here that says software defined radio package. Now there are a couple of different versions of the software here, including one down here at the bottom that's got a bunch of plugins, community plugins that are created for Airspy. Let's not focus on that right now. Let's just start off with this. This is version 1919. Okay, this is the most recent release that they have put out. There are some other release candidates that they've put out. There's some, some stuff they're trying out, but this is the most recent stable official release that has come out for Airspy's SDR Sharp. Okay, so just click on download. Now I'm in Chrome, so it's going to actually pop up a little bloop right up here, and it's going to give me this download up here at the top. Okay, so here's how you actually install this onto your computer. So I'm going to open up my File Explorer. Now, a lot of these SDR softwares, when you install them, they actually do all the work for you of creating the folders and all that kind of stuff. SDR Sharp doesn't do that. You have to do a little bit of the work yourself, but it's really super simple. Super, super simple. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is I'm in Windows 10. You may be a little bit different if you're in Windows 11, but I just recently did this process in Windows 11. It was pretty much the same thing. So I'm going to try to show some different options for different terminology or different buttons and things like that. But if you know that your download folder looks a little bit different than mine or is a different place than mine, just kind of know that, right? So there may be some subtle differences between what I'm looking at and what you're looking at. So just kind of know that and make sure you're familiar with your computer before you start doing any kind of installations, okay? So I'm going to use, I have my little quick access in my File Explorer. I have my little quick access tab over here on the left-hand side that has all these little folders that I've created for myself. Click Downloads, okay? And you're looking for the one that says SDR Sharp x86. That's the file we just downloaded from Airspy's website. So double-click on that, and that is going to bring up a bunch of files here, okay? Now, you could technically run it out of this. I think you can run it out of the compressed file. I think we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that this is in a location on our computer that's permanent, that we can get to and we can have access to, that any plugins that you do decide later on that you want to add to it are going to know where to look for it. And it's a nice stable environment for your software to live in. So we're going to actually extract all these files into a folder on our computer, okay? Now, I have a button up here that says extract all. Some of you may or may not have that button. So if your process on your computer is a little bit different for unzipping these files or extracting files into a folder, make sure you kind of know that and know how to do that. If you don't, maybe a quick Google search might help out for your particular version of Windows or whatever you might have. But for mine, I have a button here that says extract all. There's also a pink area up here that says extract, right? So that's where I'm in this compressed folder tools tab here. So I'm going to hit extract all, and it's going to bring up a window that looks like this, and it's asking me, it's basically saying, tell me where to put these files, okay? I want to put this in a very specific location. Don't use this default, okay? Don't use this default. I want to put these files in a very specific location. And that location is, I hit browse right here. Now, you, again, may have it a little bit different on your computer. I have an area called this PC where I have like my different external hard drives and things like that in here. The main folder, the main thing you're looking for is the C drive. You want to go to your C drive. You want to have a folder in your C drive. It's called the root folder, right? Your C drive. You want to have a folder in your root folder on the C drive. That's where you're going to put your SDR Sharp files. That's where any plugins are looking to have your files stored for SDR Sharp. That's where it just works the best. Don't put in program files. It's not going to work. I don't think it's going to work at all, actually, if it's in program files. So put it in, I remember right, put it in your C drive, though. This is the best place to put it. Put it in your root folder, in your C drive folder. And so what you'll want to do is create a folder right now that you'll put all these files into. Now, I'm going to show you two ways of doing that. If you have a folder, new folder button right here in your Windows, then use that. Use the button that says new folder. If you don't, you'll notice here as I kind of hover my mouse over some of these, it's going to have a little highlight for those different folders. I want to move my mouse pointer off to the side where it doesn't do that anymore. Okay? Don't do what I'm about to do if you're highlighting one of these folders, because it's going to create a folder in that folder, and you don't want to do that. So go over here off to the side where I'm not highlighting anything, and now right click my mouse and choose new folder. And it's going to create a folder in my root C hard drive. And I'm going to call this folder SDR Sharp. Capital S, capital D, capital R, capital S, lowercase h-a-r-p. All one word. SDR Sharp. Okay? That's what we want to create for our folder in our C drive, and then hit select folder. So if you've done this right, it should now say C:\/SDR Sharp. Okay? It should now say that in this little destination window here. Okay, if it doesn't, pause this video and go back and figure out how to make that work and get your folder into your C drive. You need to have this SDR Sharp folder in your C drive. So at this point, before I hit extract, don't hit extract if this doesn't say C:\/SDR Sharp. Okay, once it does, you can unpause the video and meet me back here. Ready? Okay, so we all have the SDR Sharp folder now. So let's hit extract. And it's going to extract all those files that we downloaded from the compressed file into our folder. And now we're going to have SDR Sharp software. And it's going to bring up a new folder like this. Okay? So pretty cool. We've now got a folder with all of our different files in it. So let's open up SDR Sharp and start playing around, shall we? So what you're looking for is a file that says SDR Sharp. It's an application file. Mine's 91 megabytes. So I'm going to double click on that and open up the SDR Sharp application. There's some other ones in here for some different things. We're not going to go into all that here. We're just going to play around with the actual SDR Sharp software. Once it's downloaded and you've installed it and you've extracted all your files into the folder and you've now opened it up, it should look a little like this. Now, pro tip, down here on your little icons you have at the bottom of your Windows screen, the one that you have for SDR Sharp that's highlighted right here, right click on that. It should say SDR Sharp Studio. There's an option there that says pin to taskbar. Do that. And I'm going to move mine over here with the rest of my SDR programs. But you want to pin that to your taskbar to make it easier for you to find. So you don't have to go in every time into your C folder. pin that to your taskbar down here at the bottom, and you'll always be able to go right to it, okay? All right. So now we are in SDR Sharp, and we haven't got any signals yet because we don't have our SDR plugged in just yet. But at least before we get there, I want to at least kind of show you this interface that we're working with here. Okay, you've got your frequency display up here. You got your volume slider right here. You have some of these different little boxes. Each of these little boxes does something a little different. Each of them holds a different function. And you're able to move these boxes around and kind of dock them where you want to for the workflow that you want. So, like for instance, I would like to have my source over on the right-hand side of my screen at the top. So I'm going to now click and drag, and I want to dock this over here on the right-hand side. Remember I said I want on the right at the top? So I get to that little arrow and I let go, and now it's over here on the right. Okay. Now I want this little radio one below it. So how do I do that? So I click and drag it. And when I come over here, now you're going to see a new compass rose that is going to pop up here, new direction arrows. I want the one that's at the bottom. If I choose the one in the middle with the white dot, it's going to stack that box on top of the other one that I just put there. I want this below it. So I'm going to click and put it right, just let go of my mouse now, and it's going to go right there. Okay. So I'm not going to go through all the different boxes. You kind of play with them and kind of figure out which ones you need and want and where you want to put them. But at least wanted to kind of show you that's how this interface works. Okay. All right. Now it is time for us to plug in the Airspy. So first thing I need to do is plug in my antenna. All right. My antenna is now plugged in. Now let's plug in the Airspy. You hear that? Now, I didn't install any drivers or anything like that. I just installed the SDR Sharp software, okay? That's all I did. Plug this in, and now we're ready to go. Okay, so I still don't have radio signals coming through. There's something you have to do first. You have to hit the play button up here at the top, okay? So let's do that. Let's hit the play button. No device available. What's that about? Well, we have a little clue. Look over here on the far right or far left if you haven't moved it yet. That source box, what does it say? It says Airspy R2 Mini. That means it's looking for an Airspy R2 SDR or a Mini. We don't have that. We have an HF Plus series. So we need to go tell that to look for an HF Plus discovery. So go over here to your hamburger and click on, hover over source rather. You see one of the options here says Airspy HF Plus. We want to click on that. You'll see there's a bunch of other ones on there. So if you have these different kinds of like RTL SDRs and things like that, you can do those. But we're using the Airspy HF Plus Discovery, and we hope that's what you're using. So we're going to click on HF Plus Series. And now it has found our Airspy that we have plugged in. You'll see it's got firmware version 3.0.7-BB. And it's going to give me up to 910 kilosamples per second of sample rate, and each of those sample rates gives me a different bandwidth. That's going to come in very handy here in a little bit. Okay. So it'll give you your device serial number. If you have multiple ones plugged in, it'll actually allow you to select which one you want to use or which one you want to be kind of working off of. But I've only got one. Now that it's done that, you see it's jumped my frequency display. It was at 103 megahertz, right? Now it's at 7.2 megahertz. That's cool. That's fine. Okay. So now hit that play button again. There you go. So now we've got signals coming through, and I've got audio coming through. You can hear it, right? You can hear the static. Okay. So now we've got something coming through. We're making progress. Okay. Up here at the top is your frequency display. How do you change frequencies? The easiest way to do this, if you look and you hover your mouse over one of the numbers, you're going to see there are two halves. The bottom half that kind of highlights blue and the top half that highlights red. If I click on the top half, it's going to go up a number. Okay. If I click on the bottom half, it's going to go down a number. I can also use a scroll wheel if I have one on my mouse, which I do, and you can scroll down and scroll up. Okay. That's the easiest way, I think, to change frequencies in SDR Sharp. So let's take ourselves down to the medium wave band. And there we are. All right, I had to get my antenna. I realized my antenna wasn't actually plugged in, so we plugged our antenna back in. We're good. So now we've got all kinds of signals coming in, right? So again, all we had to do is make sure it's looking for the HF Plus series, and then hit the play button, and now we've got signals. Now I've turned it down just a little bit. Uses the the volume slider here. You can mute it as well if you click on the speaker icon, unmute, by also double clicking on or clicking on it once. And there you go. Now we're up and running. We've got signals coming in. Let me give you a really quick demonstration of a couple of the features you're going to want to make sure that you know. If you're used to changing your modes to like upper sideband, lower sideband, and stuff like that, that lives over here on the radio tab right here. If you don't have that tab, you should, because that's how it starts off, but you can always, if you can't find it, double click up here on your hamburger and then click on radio, and it'll pull it up for you. I usually DX out of DSB, dual sideband. That's where I usually DX. There's a handful of reasons why, so that's where I would probably start. Okay, so there we go. You can zoom in if you want to zoom. So if you go over here, if you want to zoom in on your signal, you can hover over the zoom button right here, and then this little slider right here will allow you to zoom in pretty tight. Pretty cool, huh? Probably not used to seeing your signals like this if you haven't used an SDR before. And you can get really nice and tight as well. You can get really super close, but we're gonna back it out. And as you do that zoom, you'll see this is 1190, this is 1210 over here on the side. So you kind of decide where you want it to kind of live, how tight in you want to be. But this spectrum, this waterfall down here, each one of these little red lines you see here on mine is a trace. That's at least a signal. There may be more than one signal in there, but each one of these traces indicate there is a strong signal there for you to listen to. Over here on 1230, I've got a really strong signal to listen to. I can actually take my mouse pointer over here and see where it says 1230 kilohertz. I can click on that and it takes me right to it, right? So I don't have to actually do the changing up here. I can click on it that way as well. There's 1220, there's 1210, 1200. Oh, I get right off of that. So I use my little mouse up here to go right to the 1200. I just went up one from 1199. Okay, so I usually use a DSB. There's a mode here called binaural. It kind of defaults to that. So I'm going to unmute here real quick and let you hear this. It's kind of a pseudo stereo. What it basically does is it takes the lower sideband and it throws it in your left ear and your upper sideband into your right ear, so you hear both sidebands simultaneously in separate ears. It can be helpful for you because some stations are stronger in one sideband than the other. It can be helpful for you in hearing some of those signals, so that may be worth a shot. A couple of other things that you'll want to make sure that you know. This is your step right here, so if I'm going to use my mouse scroll wheel, if I just put it over here in the waterfall area and I just use my mouse scroll wheel, you'll see I'm going up 1 kilohertz at a time. That's fine. I'm in the United States. I may enjoy more of the 10 kilohertz at a time. I don't get a lot of transatlantic, so now I'm going 10 kilohertz at a time. You can also do a 9 if you'd rather do 9. If you want to try looking for 9 kilohertz splits or you're outside of the United States, it's really up to you. But this little I call it kind of the dumbbell look, or the wide H. That's where you change your step, your step on your frequency tuning. I also click here. You have a couple of different options. You've got center tuning, you've got free tuning, and you've got sticky tuning. Let me kind of show you what this one does. So here is center tuning. What this one is going to do is it's going to change what frequency is in the center of your waterfall and your spectrum display here. So I'm going to zoom out. So this is just keeping whatever is in the center, right in the middle. That's what you're changing. So here 510 is the middle frequency. Everything else off to the side is what kind of the whole bandwidth is going to show me here. So as I scroll up, I'm keeping that center frequency as my main thing, right? So whatever's up here at the top is what's in the middle. You can also do what's called free tuning. What does that mean? Well, that means I'm just keeping whatever frequency is up at the top. That's where I am, but it's somewhere on that display. And so it's not always going to be in the middle. It might be on the bottom end. It might be in the middle. It might be towards the top. It just depends on where you are in the total bandwidth that you've captured here. Where this can be helpful, like for instance, let's say I wanted to see everything in the full bandwidth from the top of the band down. So I'm gonna go to 1600 kilohertz here. And just go to 16. I want 1600 to be the band edge right up here on the top. There we go. So this is going to give me everything from 1600 down. Okay. In this case, that is at 890. So I've got the full range here from 1600 down to 890, all in one band window. So now I can just kind of scroll through here, keeping 1600 at the top. Keeping 1600 top, I can just kind of scroll through this one little window here, and I know this is all in that one window. Now if I go down below it, it's going to move that. Now I've lost 1600 at the top, which is fine, but there may be reasons for like doing recordings and things like that, which will be a separate video. There may be reasons why you want that to be kind of within that one window and having, you know, like I said, 1600 here at the top or whatever, and kind of getting down to the bottom. We'll talk about that in our recording video that we'll do, but this is just the introduction. So I at least want you to kind of see how it works. And then your other one is sticky tuning. What is sticky tuning? It's like center tuning, but it's wherever you are in this waterfall, the spectrum display, whatever frequency's up here, that's where it's going to stay. So in this case, I was down here at the bottom. The frequency that's on the frequency display was at the bottom of the spectrum down here on the far left. And so that's where I'm staying. Now, if I move and I put this mouse pointer, let's say right here at 1450, and I move, now it's going to stay right there in the middle again, like we saw with center tuning. So it just depends on what you want. And so you'll want to play around with it a little bit. I usually keep mine in center tuning most of the time, but there are times when I want it in free tuning. I don't use sticky that much, but I'll use either free or center, mostly center tuning. So it just depends on what you need. You can also change your frequency by the whatever your step is over here. You can also change your frequency up and down using these up and down arrows here, and it'll advance by the number of whatever the preset step is that you have over there. So that's another thing that you can do. The only thing I think would kind of be helpful to know is bandwidth. And I'm talking about the bandwidth of the signal, not bandwidth of the overall radio. So the bandwidth of the overall receiver right now is 725 kilohertz. So when I'm fully zoomed out here, I'm looking at 725 kilohertz of the spectrum at one time. That's the largest that you can currently get on the Airspy HF Plus Discovery with the current release candidate, or the current release that's out right now. So this is the full bandwidth that I can possibly do. Now I can go tighter if you want to, and there may be some reasons why you want to do that for certain applications, but generally speaking, most of us are going to keep it at 912 kilosamples per second, which gives you that 725 kilohertz of bandwidth. Okay. So that's the receiver bandwidth. That's the amount of the spectrum that we're looking at one time. Now there's also signal bandwidth, and that is on the frequency that I'm tuned to, how wide am I in capturing the signals around that signal. Now here in DSB, if I look at that, whatever my bandwidth is, it's equal on both sides. So if I move one of these little lines right here, this little shaded part, that's the bandwidth, right? And that's going to correspond to this number right here that says bandwidth. It's going to correspond to that. So as I click on that line and I shrink it down, I'm tightening my bandwidth. As I click and drag it out, I'm opening my bandwidth. And so let me give you a demonstration what that sounds like. Right? So that is how, like, for instance, in this case, there is a station down here. You see this little spike right here? There's a station that's off frequency. If I want to get rid of that, I can tighten my bandwidth so that it's not in the amount of the signal receive area that I have currently set up on my receiver. I can also switch to, like, upper sideband in this case. And then I can adjust my bandwidth accordingly. But I'm only adjusting it on that one side. So if there's interference or something else, I can use that to adjust my bandwidth. But again, I can just click and drag it. And on this DSB mode, it's going to equally adjust both sides at the same time. That's it. That's SDR Sharp. That's getting started in SDR Sharp. It's super easy. So you just have to make sure you know how to install it. That's the hardest part, is knowing how to install this thing. Once it's installed, you plug in your SDR, you hit the play button, make sure your antenna's plugged in, and you're good to go. If you followed all the steps along with us here, you should now be receiving audio out of your SDR, your Airspy HF Plus Discovery SDR, and starting your DX. We're going to do additional videos where we go into more detail about all the different features and recording and all that kind of stuff, but this is just getting you started, okay? Now, that is how to install from the website. Now, occasionally, the developers from Airspy on Twitter will, or X as it were, will announce a release candidate. So it's not an official release that's out there that you can download from their website, but for people who want to kind of tinker around with it and kind of play around with the new kind of release candidate, they'll put out a link sometime. So if you're on Twitter/X, you're going to want to make sure that you're following this guy. His name is Yusef. He is Airspy, and his handle here on Twitter/X is @LambdaProg. So make sure you're following him, because he will announce things there that you don't see like on the website. So he'll have like the firmware updates for the Airspy will be posted here. And then there's also things like this. So this is a release candidate. So this is not available on the website. This is the release candidate, version 1920. So when we just downloaded SDR Sharp, it was version 1919. We're going to show you now when a new version is released, how do you install that? Because it's not like other SDR programs where you can like check for updates and it installs the update or whatever. We're going to actually show you how you update SDR Sharp. So in this case, we are going to go right here. And the link for this 1920 is in the video description, because this is a big one. This has a better code channel canceller. It has some better AGC stuff. Like this is a really, really good version of Airspy's SDR Sharp software. So I highly recommend that you download this. So I'll show you how you do this. So just click on this link right here, SDR 1920 release candidate, from the link that's in our video description. That'll take you to this page, and then click on that link right here for the release candidate. And then once it's downloaded, go to your downloads folder. I'm just going to click on it up here in my window, and it's going to bring you another one of these, just like we just looked at. We're going to hit extract all again. Now here's the fun part. You don't have to create a new folder for it. You're going to use the exact same folder you already have. So when you hit extract all and it then asks you where do you want to put this file, and I click on browse, I go back to my C folder, my C drive rather, and then I click on the SDR Sharp folder that we created previously, and I hit select folder, and then I hit extract. And it's going to say, hey, there are 26 files with the same names, replace those. And now when we reload SDR Sharp, it will update to version 1920. So I'm going to close my windows out here. And we're going to use that same button that we used before that we saved down here at our little pin on the taskbar. We use that same icon down there in our taskbar that we pinned earlier. Now it says version 1.0.0.1920. So we have upgraded our version of SDR Sharp to the newest version, 1920. That's all you have to do is when a new version comes out, either on their Airspy website, or if you see one of those release candidates that Prog puts out, you just go to the link that's there or go to the website, whatever, get the latest version, extract that into your SDR Sharp folder that already exists, and replace those files with the new versions, and now you're updated. You're upgraded. And that's it. And then if I go back over, now when you do that, notice it'll say at the top up here, Airspy R2/mini. So if I hit play, it's going to say, I don't see a device available. Click on your hamburger, go to source, HF Plus series, click play. And now if I go back down, that's noisy. If I go back down to my medium wave,
708-4789.
There we go. Some slight changes on this version, mostly the code channel canceller, which we'll hear all about in the other video. Also, the AGC is a little different here. So if I click on here, I can actually say learn, and it'll adjust the automatic gain control automatically for me. And it's a little more powerful in this 1920 version. And there's some other improvements on like the noise reduction and stuff like that. So I recommend that you use this version 1920, that you download that. And again, we'll have the link on how to get there in the video description. So make sure you download that, update your SDR Sharp once you've done the 1919. If you are watching this in the future, A, send me some lottery numbers. B, you may have 1920 or something later on your Airspy download page. Cool. Lucky you. You have the easy way of doing this. So just download the latest version and then go check out Prog on Twitter, or you can also go to the groups.io forum here for Airspy. There is the Airspy groups.io forum. So just go to groups.io and search Airspy, and you'll see Airspy and SDR Sharp software defined radio. He also posts them there if you don't use Twitter. And you can get those latest versions and make sure you keep it up to date. We're also going to flash the firmware on this here in a second, which we have a separate video for that, so make sure you watch the details on that. But let me go ahead and at least download that here so I can get started. Actually, I already have it downloaded. Lloyd. I downloaded this earlier, so I'm gonna extract this bad boy. In this case, for the firmware, I can extract it wherever I want. It doesn't have to be in the SDR Sharp folder. So you're watching, this is the process for updating the firmware. I'm just not going to talk through it. I'm just going to do it. That's fine. Run anyway. It's looking for my Airspy, which it's now found. And it's going to do the flash. Again, all the instructions on how to do this are in our firmware update video that will also have a link in the video description as well for you. Now it's rebooting it. It's done. We're going to unplug our SDR. Plug it back in. And now when I go back to my SDR Sharp software, it should say firmware version 4.0.8. 4.0.8.bb 1920. We are cooking with Crisco. If you found this video to be helpful, we'd appreciate it if you gave us a thumbs up, and a comment is always welcome and helpful in making sure that our videos can reach more viewers. And don't forget to make sure you subscribe and hit that bell icon to be notified when more videos are available. From all of us here at DX Central, my friends, take care, 73, and best of DX. Now, let's go back and hit the bands.